In this lecture, we are going to look at the study designs. The first part is the ecological study. As you see in this ecological study, we gathering data in group level and in aggregate level, as I wrote here. It just to find a potential association between two groups. It's better to put it in an example. Just imagine that we want to find out the average dietary fat per capita and its relation with the breast cancer. One thing that we can do, we can go and find out how many breast cancer in 1 year, for example, happen in different countries, and how much it recorded about the dietary fat. We don't know about the causality, by the way. So if we make a curve between the rate of the breast cancer per 100,000 per year, per 100,000 person per year, it's the incidence. And then we have the also record for dietary fat intake per capita. And we can find out that in different countries, there will be a kind of linear correlation based on which countries get involved. And as you see here, the Japan, for example, is have the lowest rate of using the fat intake and the lowest rate of the breast cancer incidence. And as you see, we can start to think about it that maybe in this information, which is in country level and not individual level, as I mentioned here, it should be something. Maybe these two are related to each other. But we are talking about the association, and then we cannot just find the causality. But if we have such an idea, we can start to do some research. We can find the real association. We can find, for example, how the people in these categories maybe have the problem. For example, finding the women who has breast cancer and women who doesn't have in the Japan and just compare them. So this problem with the causality, that we cannot say that the dietary fat is a cause of breast cancer, it's also a problem that we may have with the cross-sectional study. When we want to have this idea, we made a hypothesis that this hypothesis can be correct, can be not. And the first step is also to do a cross-sectional study. It means to gathering the data. We measuring actually both the dietary fat intake as exposure based on the hypothesis and the rate of breast cancer uh, also as the outcome at the same time. So what we have here is measuring exposure and outcome at the same time. And there, as I just mentioned many times and insist to mention it again, the cross-sectional study does not show the causality, and we cannot define the outcome from the exposure. But we can find and estimate the prevalence, and this is like a snapshot. Just like, for example, the result is just like looking at a car accident picture, and then when you look at the picture, you cannot say which car is the guilty one, but you can explain the scene of the accident. So the cross-sectional studies also give us such an idea about a uh, general thing about the uh, a condition or a situation that we are investigating. Well, if we go to the cross-sectional with the other type of a study to gather the information in form of the analytic. And here we have case control study, cohort study, and randomized control trial. I put the case control study in the top because the level of the evidence that it gives us is less than cohort, and the level of the evidence that we can get from randomized control trial is more than the cohort. So this is a hierarchy here, as you see. In case control study, we are comparing the past history of the case and the control group with each other. Usually we use case control study for a diseases that we have a group of people that have a disease, and this is not a very common disease. and then we are match them with a control, and then look into the back history, to the past history. For example, we will find that the past history people who have the disease, they, for example, are smokers or smoking more than the other one. So we are start to thinking that smoking might be a risk factor, as an example. So we have some problems also with the case control study. The bias is the people, if we don't use the recorded data from the past, like the hospital record or something like that, and only ask the people, we may have some bias like a recall bias. But the next one is the cohort study. Cohort study, we are looking at the group which are at risk, the people who are at risk, but they don't have the disease. And then we are following them during the time, and then when we follow them, we can divide them, the people who get the disease or condition and the people who don't. And at the same time, we can record the suspicious risk factors. We are not necessarily we don't know what the risk factors are, but we guess and we follow, and then we can find out after a period. For example, we see people who are doing a risk factor like smoking, they're developing this disease like hypertension or diabetes, and then the others don't. The next one is randomized control trial. As I explained, also this is the intervention that the researcher is induced into the population to be able to to evaluate the effect. So we have a group of people who are potentially have a disease, and then we gave them two different conditions. Usually it's random choosing them, and it's blinded because they don't know if they are using the medication or not, or it's placebo. And then we can see the effect in the end, and we can find this problem. There are a lot of ethical issues that we should follow in the randomized control trial. As you see, if we put it based on the present, based on the time, we have in the case control study, we look in the past, and in the cohort and the randomized control trial, we are looking at the future.